Last week we discussed the importance of love in a marriage, how it's the glue of the marriage, and we gave an example what it means not to have real love. The example we gave of, if you remember, the guy who was in the Twin Towers, my wife's co-worker, secretary who was divorced, and one time she had the guts to ask her, how come you got divorced? So she said, my husband was running down the Twin Towers as the other one was hit, and his life was on the line, and he just thought to himself, if I make it out alive, something has to change in my life. And his New Year's resolution was to leave his wife and go marry his secretary. After 25 years of marriage, this is what his marriage meant to him. Absolutely nothing. That's a marriage that is without any love, true love. I'm sure at some point in their relationship, they really thought they were in love, which last week we explained that was not true love. It's called infatuation, the chemical imbalance and things going on in the brain similar to cocaine. And true love only comes after many years of marriage. So tonight I want to discuss how one develops love. What is the definition of true love and how one develops it? Interestingly, this past week someone told me another story. You're not going to believe this. The guy, this rabbi, was talking to a certain guy in the community, and this person was having a lot of problems financially. So he went to his house and he saw that in his house was parked a brand new Mercedes. Talking about an $80,000, $90,000 Mercedes. So he asked him, he says, please forgive me, but if you're having such financial issues, why did you just buy this, it looks brand new, this brand new Mercedes? He says, well, let me tell you. Really, I didn't want to buy it, but my wife left me no options. Why? Because my wife said, she gave me the ultimatum. She's used to a certain standard of living. They used to have a lot of money. He lost all his money over the years in different investments in the crash 6-7 years ago. And she basically threatened him that if he does not buy her these top quality cars, she's going to leave him. Can you imagine, after being married 20 years, that this is what the marriage means, that she's willing to pick up and go if he does not buy her a brand new Mercedes. And once again, we see what it means in a relationship, couples living together, but there is no real bond, no real love. It used to be some infatuation when they were dating and engaged, but very, very quickly it wears off. So how does one turn the infatuation, which is supposed to be the starting spark of a marriage, this was God's intention, and turn it into real love, into true love, something which is real, something which is long-lasting? How does one develop a love for someone, or or for something, for anything? So I like to digress to a certain section in the Torah, and after we read this famous story, see if what we could pull out of here, an interesting psychology on how you develop love. The Torah tells us in one of the beginning stories where Avram Avinu, our ancestor, he got old and he realized that he has to do something in terms of finding a wife for his son Yitzchak. So the Torah says that he commanded his servant Eliezer. Eliezer was his right-hand man. Eliezer was a very holy person. And he commanded Eliezer, please, I don't want to marry off my son to any of the girls in Canaan, in this area. Please take off to my hometown. There are plenty of hopefully good girls over there. And find a wife for my son, for Yitzchak. He made Eliezer swear that he's going to do the proper job in finding a girl. And he takes off. He swears and he takes off. Then the Torah says something interesting, that when he reached the destination, the hometown of Avram, he made a certain condition with God. And listen to his condition. He said that, God, please, Hakrina lefana hayom, please work it out for me today, that, and do chesed, do kindness for your servant Avram, that I'm going to go stand by a well, Well has a tremendous significance in this religion. Water, well, Kabbalistic concepts. And by the well, a lot of girls come, a lot of shepherds come, a lot of things go on over there. Whichever girl comes out and tells me, and I ask her for a drink of water, she says, here's a drink. And not only does she give me a drink, but she goes ahead and gives all the camels, all of my donkeys and camels, drinks also. That's the girl who God chose. It's a clear sign from God. This is the girl that's destined to marry Avram's son, Yitzchak, my master's son, Yitzchak. This is the condition he made. The girl who is willing to come out and not only give me water, but is going to give water to the camels that are with me. It says right when he finished saying this condition to God, right away there was a girl by the name of Rivka, and Rivka came out, and he came and asked her. He saw this girl, she looked like a nice girl, asked her, can I please have some water? So she said, sure. She gave him water, and she started running to get water for the camels. And the commentators point out that he had 10 camels. Camels, when they're thirsty, they drink, 10 camels could drink up to about 140 gallons of water. You know, you go to the store, Ralph's, and you buy a gallon pitcher of water. So a gallon container of water, 140 gallons of them, she had to go back and forth. And again, she had to go to a well and she had to draw it out. This was a lot of work. It was very strenuous work for a girl, but it didn't stop her. There's Eliezer standing there, and he sees this girl going back and forth, bringing water. And right away, after she gives water to all the camels, the Torah writes that he takes out jewelry, he takes out bracelets and rings and earrings, and he puts it on her. He decided that this is the chosen one. It's a clear sign. I'm going to choose her to marry Yitzchak. And then he goes on to say, do you have any room in your house for me to sleep? And the story continues. So I was reading this story, and I was bothered by a question. Anyone here have any questions on this story of what goes on? Again, just to repeat it one more time. Avram told him, please go to my hometown, find a girl for me. He goes there. There are many questions on this, but I'm thinking of one blatant question. Goes there, and he makes a condition with God. Normally we don't make conditions with God. We'll leave that question out. It says the girl that comes and she gives me water and gives all the camels water, that's the one that's destined to marry my master's son. And poof, this is what occurs, and the rest is history. He ended up marrying Rivka, and they lived happily ever after. Any questions? Yes.
Since Eliezer already saw that Rivka was so willing to bring water, like why didn't he help her after the first time? Like he didn't have to make her like she's a little girl, like fetch water back and forth.
Okay, that's a good question.
He already saw that she had the heart to do it. So like shouldn't that be enough for him?
Right. Valid question. Okay. Very valid question.
I don't know, that's what I learned one time.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions?
I forgot mine actually.
What?
I forgot it.
You forgot yours. No one else has a question? Yes.
Well, I'm sure it's valid then as it is now, but in those times, she too would have to agree to her marriage, so she would need to see him preferably, right? And also
So the story goes on, and he does, after he gives her the bracelet and he decides this is the one, he already made up in his mind, if she says yes, that he's going to take her. So they ended up going to the house, and in front of his parents, he asked her, do you want to go with me? She said yes. She accepted. You're right, 100%. You can't go without the acceptance of the girl, obviously. You can't force. But that is true, valid point, and the story tells us that, yeah, he did get her approval. Any other questions?
How is that the only thing she needed?
What do you mean?
How's that the only requirement for marriage?
Good. Now, can I ask a question? When you're going out to get married, don't you have like a whole laundry list of things that you're looking for? The priorities, what's important to you, what's not so important? Here he comes, of all things in the world, he makes one condition. If I find a girl that comes and he does chesed, act of kindness, gives me water, gives the camels water, that's the one. How do you know that's the one? What about all the other things? How do you know if she's a God-fearing woman? Maybe she serves idols. In fact, her brother served idols. Her brother was none other than who? Lava. Her father, Betuel, he served idols. It's a country where the name of the game is idol worship. Of all things, you don't check out to see if she worships idols. You don't check out to see if she's a God-fearing Jew. You don't know if she has modesty. I mean, you could tell a little bit from the way she dresses, but you don't really know. You don't know the person. He doesn't know beans about her. He doesn't know anything. The only thing he knows is that she was very quick to do chesed. Why, of all things, is he basing the entire marriage of, this is not a simple average person. This is Yitzchak. He's one of the three pillars of the world. We pray every Shemon Esrei. We say in the name of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yitzchak was one of the holiest people to ever live in the history of mankind. Here, you're about to get him married. That is the biggest decision you will make in your life. Anyone who's married less than even a month knows that this is the biggest decision of your life. Not to scare anyone here, right? So, what's going on? Why don't you check her out before you put the rings on her, bracelets, and make a whole party? First, find out what the story is. Does she serve idols? Doesn't she? Is she God-fearing? Is she not? Just one thing he based it on? Someone who does chesed? I mean, it's a nice thing. But come on. Yes?
Wasn't that like the condition that he made with God? If she does chesed, like that's like what we're not getting into, but like the condition with God was if she does chesed, then that she's the right one. So in a way, it was a sign.
You're right.
So
That is a valid point. But what was he thinking? He's a smart person. This is not like a slave. This Eliezer was the one of the rabbis in their house, in Avram's house. He sent her. He knew Avram knew that he's a smart man, and he'll be able to judge and be able to make the right decisions. So he made this condition. But of all the condition that he made with God, granted God answered him. There's a discussion, by the way, in the Talmud, in the Gemara, if what he did was correct or not. Because, there's a discussion about that. Your point is a very valid point. But what was he thinking to make this the condition? You hear what I'm saying? Your point is a very valid point. You're right. God did answer. The Gemara says 3 people made these type of conditions. 2 were answered improperly. 1 was answered properly. This was one of the one who was answered. He had fortune. He had luck. And but the question is, why did he make this the condition? The condition to know what is the ultimate priority, what is the defining trait of which girl is going to marry Yitzchak is this trait. So I was bothered by why. Why this trait of all traits? There's many other things he doesn't know about her. So to answer this question, I'd like to digress to a different area. And I'd like to share with you a very interesting psychology, which to me, you'll see from the applications, is a very powerful idea. There is a Gemara in Baba Metzia. It's a piece in the Talmud, where the Gemara writes of the following scenario. What happens, let's say, someone has a vegetable garden, and they grow tomatoes. I had that when I was in New York about a year ago. I lived in Plainview on Shabbats. I lived in Queens and went to Plainview. I was a rabbi there in a synagogue for about 4 years. One of the houses near my house, every time I passed by, was this old woman, must have been in her 60s, 70s, and she loved her garden. And she had these tomatoes and cucumbers, all stuff growing. Obviously in New York you could only, grow stuff during the summer period, in the spring and the summer. But every summer, every spring, she non-stop. On Saturdays, on Shabbat, she was on her vegetable garden, spending a good 4 or 5 hours in a day. Imagine this woman would bring a basket of her tomatoes that she took her time to, a couple months of planting and weeding and the whole deal, whatever they do. And she says, listen, I have to go somewhere for a week. Can you take care of my tomatoes? I have nowhere to put them. Picture back then when they didn't have any fridges and different places to put it. Take care of my tomatoes so no animals eat it, and you're in charge. She deposits the tomatoes by you. I know this is not, it's hard, you'll see how it relates to your life. And what are the Rabbi discussing about tomatoes and farming? Get with the program, get with the times. Give me a second. So you take the tomatoes, and after a week, this lady doesn't come back. The tomatoes start rotting. 10% are already rotted. You wait another day, 20%. You waited 3-4 days, about 70% of the tomatoes are already rotted. You have 30% that are still okay. The Gemara says you have 2 choices. You could either sell the tomatoes, at least 30%, you'll give her the money, or You could keep it and wait to see, hopefully she'll show up. What should you do?
So,
So the obvious thing you would say is to sell it, no? Savor the potential, 30%. You say keep it. Why keep it?
Less trouble, and that's what she asked us.
You mean less trouble for the person taking care of it.
Yeah, and that's what she wanted also.
So good. What she wanted. Listen to what the Gemara says. Listen to the psychology.
The
Gemara says, but I could argue, I could say that she only wanted it assuming that she's going to come back for it. Why would she want to come back for rotten tomatoes? Who wants rotten tomatoes? At least if she has the money for 30% of tomatoes, she could take the $5 and go to her house and buy fresh tomatoes. So says the Gemara, the following line: Rotze Adam bekav shelo mitisha kavin shel chavero. A person would rather have 9 kav. 9 kav is a certain amount. You'd rather have 9 pounds of your own tomatoes that you grew through your hard work and toil and labor, than having 1 pound of store-bought tomatoes. The fresh, luscious red tomatoes you find at Ralph's. I'd rather have 9 pounds of my own, 1 pound of my own, than 9 pounds of Ralph's tomatoes. What's the explanation? The explanation is that you spent several days, several weeks, from the beginning to the end. You planted the tomatoes, the seeds, and it grew, and you took care of it, and you had to water it. You invested a lot of time and energy into those tomatoes. Those tomatoes have a lot of value to you. There's a bond, there's a connection, and you could even say that there's a lack of love to the tomatoes. It says the Gemara that you should keep the tomatoes because a strong bond was created between the owner of these tomatoes, and you rather have 1 pound of your own tomatoes, even if they're kind of rotting a little bit, than 9 pounds of rough tomatoes. Again, I don't think anyone here has ever planted tomatoes. I don't know, has anyone? But you'll see the application in a second. That's the Gemara. This is the psychology, because something that you spend time and energy into, you tend to associate with, you tend to love. There's an attachment, there's a bond. Now, I'll give you another example. This happened to me myself. I could attest to this, that it's true. Back in Queens, we had 2 showers in our apartment. And the apartment was an older apartment, like all apartments there. And one of the shower heads, it was basically dying. I called the landlord, and I said, please, can you take care of this? The shower head is very annoying, it's not working. The landlord said, yeah, I'll take care of it, pushed me off a day, pushed me off 2 days, and then the next week pushed me off. I said, forget this. Forget this. I'm going to Home Depot, I'm going to fix this myself. I'm the farthest thing away from a fix-it man, but I just figured, what's the big deal? How hard could it be to remove the shower head and put on a new shower head? So I go to Home Depot, I look at the shower heads, and I pick one of them. I bought the shower head. I said, okay, this looks good, $10-15. It has a couple different options, different sprays. Okay, it's a good one. Come back. It took me about an hour. I have all my, all my tools, my toolbox out, and I removed the shower head. It took me about an hour to take off the stupid shower head. And I was stuck on there. It was hard. I didn't have the right tools. Finally got it off. It took me about another hour and a half to put on the new shower head. I'm all pumped. I'm excited. Finally got this done. I turn on the shower, and the water's shooting on all sides. This is not happening. So I call one of my friends, one of these fix-it guys, and he says, wait, did you use the white tape? What white tape? Teflon tape. I don't know what Teflon tape is. You got to go to the store. Yeah, it's a lot of times, if in order for it to fit on right and not to have leaks, you need the Teflon tape. Let's go back to the Home Depot, Teflon tape, get it. It basically ended up being a whole day's project. So I come back, I'll take it off again, took me time, put it back on. Finally, after all these several hours spent on this shower, I was able to fix the shower head. Now some interesting phenomena happened from then on. Anytime I wanted to take a shower, I gravitated more towards this shower. And even on Friday, if my kids were using this shower, Friday afternoon before Shabbat's coming in, my wife's like, so go use the other shower. No, this is my shower. And there's an automatic, like a gravitational pull towards this shower. That's my baby. I spent so many hours invested into that shower. Believe it or not, there's such a thing that a person develops an interest and a liking and a bond and a connection, even to something as menial as a shower head. Why? Because you invested time and energy into it. Now, if giving of oneself to something so trivial, and something so mundane, such as tomatoes and a shower head, could create such a bond and love, then how much more so for the important things in life? Now listen to this carefully. One of the most important aspects of life, in a Jew's life, especially for men, is the studying of Torah. A Jew going through life without lectures, without studying, investing time, such a fascinating world, such an intricate world, and so many details, so much going on, and so many questions. If someone doesn't spend the time to study and analyze this world of what we're doing here, you miss the whole point of life. Most people, in my opinion, are complete midgets in the sense of not spending time, intellectual midgets, not spending the time of thinking, what am I doing here? What is my purpose? So Torah learning allows a person to think straight, to realize that this whole world is a world of lies, that everything you see around you that's being preached and being on the billboards and in the media and anywhere you see, everything is lies. The truth is the truth of the next world. A person is here temporary. It's a short life compared to the world of eternity. And you have to stay focused. Torah learning. How come some people, I was in a yeshiva for many years, I saw two completely different tracks of people. Certain people gravitated towards learning. They loved it. They spent whatever time they had learning Torah. Other guys were like the guys that were wishy-washy. They came into the Beit Midrash and they went out, they sat down, they learned a little bit, and then they had this, they had phone call, the emails and texting, and they weren't so into it. What's the difference between a person who has a tremendous love for learning compared to someone else who doesn't? So I'll tell you what the Gemara says. There's a Gemara that writes, L'mayminim ba sama dechaya. It's the same idea. The ones who grab the Torah with the right hand, it's the potion of life. L'masmi'ilim ba sama demota. The ones who grab the Torah with the left hand is the potion of death. Now what in the world does this mean? You grab it with the right hand, you grab it with the left hand. Who cares which hand you're grabbing it? Says Rashi, what does it mean they grab it with the right hand? Asukim b'chol kocham. They're involved in Torah learning with all their abilities. They invest a lot of energy into it. Utrudim ladat soda, and they're involved in wanting to know the secrets, wanting to know what life's all about, wanting to know if they're on the right path. For a person like this, says the Gemara, the Torah learning is something amazing, something very powerful. It's life-changing. For another person who grabs it with the left hand, which is the weaker hand, they don't have a strong grasp on the Torah. They're wishy-washy, in, out, not really there. You could tell. Some people come to lectures, they're focused. Other people come to lectures, which annoys the living dead outside of me, and they're on their cell phones, and they're texting away. If someone's speaking, you would think the basic decency, in terms of respect to the speaker, don't pull out your cell phone, start playing on the cell phone. I know there are emergencies, there are exceptions, but when a guy in a 40-minute speech is on his phone for about 15 minutes, and he's texting away, So you see the difference. You grab it with the right hand or grab it with the left hand. Which one is it? You know what the explanation is? They spend time and energy into something. You develop a love for it. You want it. You want it more. You ask me, of all the years I learned in yeshiva, which of the Gemaras is my favorite one? I'll tell you hands down, no question about it. The Gemara Shabbat. Now why Shabbat over all the other Gemaras? I'll tell you why. All the other Gemaras are shorter. You usually spend about a year on it. This Gemara is much longer. You spend 2 years on it. I spent thousands and thousands of hours on this Gemara. You would think, I told this to my students in high school, I'd rather lose $5,000 cash than lose my Gemara. You think I'm insane. You think I'm nuts. I invested so much time into this Gemara. It's so valuable to me. When you invest time and you give of yourself into something, you develop a love for it. And that is my baby. That's my puppy. I can't lose that. It becomes part of you. Now, I was thinking of this psychology, and I believe this plays a very big role in the love that parents have for their children also. You want to know why parents love their children more than children love the parents? It's true that God places a natural maternal and paternal love. There's a natural love every parent has for the kids. If God did not place that love, you would chuck your baby out the window 2 a.m. when you're losing your mind and the baby's been screaming for the past 4 hours. It's natural love. You love the kid. It's embedded in every parent. However, there's another reason. The fact that the parents invest so much of their time and energy into a child automatically, inevitably develops a very, very powerful love. You will not give to any other person in the world more than your children. You don't have a choice. Even if you don't want to give, they'll take. But that's like how God created the world. You're giving, constantly giving to your children. Hence, you have such a love for it. If I ask you, go ask, it shouldn't be far from us, but a family that have 10 children. And lo aleinu, one of the children has some type of handicap. Whether it's a mental handicap or physical handicap, you go ask the mother, which one of your children do you love the most? And generally, that's one of those illegal questions you're not allowed to ask. And the mother generally would not answer. But deep down, the mother would tell you after many years, I love that kid the most, the handicapped one. Why? He's handicapped. He's not all there. Because the mother had to put so much more effort and invest so much more time and energy into that child. Naturally, she will develop much more of a feeling and connection towards that child. Now, this is true for every area of life. It's a very basic psychology. And people think that by, I'll share with you that later. One more example. The guys will like this one. How can it be that a person's happiness in life is completely dependent on a sports franchise? And what I mean is as follows. Living in Queens, I had a couple college guys living under me. And these college guys were big-time San Antonio Spurs fans. I wonder what they're going through now, that they lost in the last playoffs. But 2 years ago, I think it was, they were playing LeBron James in the Miami Heat. I think he was there. And it was the finals. San Antonio lost. I saw the guy, I was very disappointed. I also wanted San Antonio to win. And they lost. And I saw the guy the next day. The guy was totally out of it. He was like down and depressed. And I said, how you doing? What's going on? Everything okay? He's like, the Spurs lost. There goes my week. I can't go to school. Literally, not joking, he was depressed. For the next week, the guy was down. Every time I saw him, his head was down. How does it make sense that a person allows a sports franchise to is he happy or is he not? Dependent on the sports franchise. How do you make sense of such a thing? You watch the games, even this past year, I saw some of the clips on the San Antonio. They lost in the last round. Right? It was, in my opinion, an upset to Oklahoma City, OKC. And you saw in one of the games when the Spurs lost at home, they lost very few games at home. One of the games is that you see they had the video on the fans. All the fans, the guy's like this, like this, his hand on his face, is like his head's down. And the guy's like this, is about to start crying. How does it make sense? It's just a sports team. The answer is the same thing. You invest so much time of your time, many, many hours throughout the year following this team. This becomes part of who you are. You associate with this team. You develop connection to this team. You talk about a typical fan at a sports game. You ever see the reactions of fans at sports games? Typical game, the Warriors. Steph Curry, the Warriors, now that they're in the semifinals. The Warriors fans are crazy fans. Or a typical football game. You watch the reaction when Steph Curry hits a three. You have a guy in the stands, many of them, standing up, pumping their fists, jumping for joy. If you just record this moment, you see that the reaction of him hitting a three-pointer is the same as the guy who wins $10 million. Now, this fan, that Steph Curry hit the three, or maybe the team won, what does he get out of it? Nothing. You go to him and you say, oh, we beat them. Who are you? Who's we? What do you have to do with this team? All of a sudden, it's we. They don't know who you are. They don't care who you are. You don't get anything out of it. $10 million, at least you got $10 million. Why is the reaction of a sports team winning the same as someone winning $10 million? It's the same idea. You invested so much time and energy into this team. It's you. It's part of who you are. It defines you. You start associating yourself and defining yourself through this team. And hence you have people that everything is their sports team. I knew of a person in New York that everything was the Yankees. His car had Yankee logos. His kippah had a Yankee logo on it. His jacket was Yankees. He told me in his house, on his door, is everything Yankee logos. From beginning, his whole life is Yankees. It's the same exact idea. You invest in your time and energy, it develops a love. Now, going back, one more example. You know, nothing against dogs, and you girls heard from me many times. I spoke about people in LA and having dogs. Nothing against having a dog. However, it gets to a point where you see people, they're treating dogs the same way they would treat human beings. You see a woman come to a dog, better, you see, and as if she's talking to a little baby, come here, like this, gives him some water, pets him, kisses him. Now, when your feelings towards a dog is the same thing as a child, that's a problem. Nothing wrong, again, with having a dog. But God places a natural love, especially for ladies, to invest it onto their children. And here you find a woman that is completely channeling this love, this drive towards a dog. And when a person loses a dog and they mourn the dog's loss as the same way they're mourning the loss of a friend or a child, that's a problem. Again, you love the dog, you lost the dog. I know it's a big loss, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be sad. But when you get depressed and you get down and you're mourning the same as a human being, it's not the same thing as a human being. I don't care what the animal rights activist or whoever it is tells you. They're not. What's the explanation? Because I invested the past 5 years of my life into this dog. How can I continue without my dog? My puppy? I miss him. How can I go on? And you get down and depressed. Develop that love. This concept is very crucial in relationships. You ask any rabbi, you ask any marriage counselor, you ask any therapist for the key ingredient to be happy in a marriage. Inevitably, they will tell you that you should go into the marriage with a mindset to give. I vividly remember when I was engaged, before I got married, I had the opportunity, the privilege to go to my Rosh Hashiva. The head rabbi of blessed memories, Zechron Tzadik Livracha, he passed away about 8-9 years ago. And I sat down with him and I wanted some advice going into marriage. He said one line. This old man in his 90s, he said one line. He says, you want to have a happy marriage? Go into the marriage with the mindset to give. What can I do for the other person? Then I was thinking to myself, that's it? I didn't say anything. No, that's it. All I have to do is go with the mindset to give. What's the big deal? I have a wonderful marriage. You fast forward, 10 years, and you got 4 or 5 kids. You haven't slept the past 4 nights, and your daughter wakes up screaming, your 8-month-old daughter, at 3 in the morning, and nobody wants to get out of bed, neither you or your wife, because you're both tired and trying to pretend that you're sleeping. So it's then that it kicks in, oh, that's what the Yeshiva was talking about. Going to the marriage to give, to be willing to give of yourself. It's hard. I'm going to give for my wife. I'm going to be willing to get up at 3 in the morning, even though it's torture. And I'm going to give her some peace and quiet, let her sleep a little bit. It's not so easy. It's very, very difficult, after being married for a little bit, to give up yourself. When you're going out and you're dating, and again the infatuation and the fake love is there, the sparks, it's easy. You think everything is going to be fine and dandy, you live happily ever after. Then real life kicks in. It's not so easy. It's very hard to constantly give of yourself. But you want to know who has a happy marriage is the person who goes into the marriage with the mentality, how much can I do for my spouse? What can I do for my spouse? Interesting, in Hebrew, the Hebrew language is not like any other language in the world. It has a lot of depth. As I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, how do you say love in Hebrew? Ahava. What is the root in Hebrew? All the words have significance of ahava. As you said, it's hav. It's the middle, the shorish, the root of the word ahava, love, is hav. Hav in Hebrew means to give. The way you develop real love is by a person constantly giving to the other, to become a giving person. That's true love. Love at first sight is not love. Getting hit by the angel Cupid is not love. And seeing someone who is cute and going out, having a good time, shooting pool, spending 4 hours, I'm in love. No, you're on cocaine, you're on drugs. You're not in love. That's just infatuation acting up. Real love comes after many, many years of doing for the other person. That's the only way to develop love. I think this is the explanation behind the original question. Eliezer comes and he wants to find a wife for Yitzchak, for his master's son. What is the defining trait that is so crucial in a marriage, which allows the marriage to continue and develops true love? There has to be a person who's a giver. He knew that if a girl is a giver, a girl is a balat chesed, she's a kindly woman, she's an adversary type of girl, everything else will fall into place. What do you mean? Maybe she serves idols, but if she has good traits, good midot, she's a good person, giving person, selfless person, once she goes with Yitzchak and gets married, things will fall into place. You want to know the key ingredient of a marriage is giving. What you should look for, you have to be very careful. People, if you notice, anyone when you're dating, the person you're dating is on any level selfish, you have to be careful. You really should find out how giving they are. And I don't only mean how much money they give to their local synagogue or Save the Dolphin Foundation or whatever places they're giving their money, but also how much of their time, how much do they do for others, how caring are they, how much of their life is focused on themselves, and how much of their life is focused on other people. We live in a very selfish generation, very. People do not care about others. I wasn't planning on saying this, but once I'm going, I just thought of, a few years ago, there was a snowstorm. Some of the girls may have heard it from me already. Snowstorm in New York. It was a horrible snowstorm. It must have been 2 feet of snow. Everything was shut down. So normally, what my wife did is she took the car, she dropped off our baby. So I took the two oldest boys to the bus stop. She took our third, the youngest, drove him to the babysitter, and she went to work. So this day, it was freezing cold and snow everywhere. She didn't want to take out the car. Especially in New York, there's no parking. Anyone who hasn't been to New York in the winter and just lived in LA, you don't appreciate LA. You don't. This was by far the best winter I ever had in my life. It's incredible. Every day I walk out, I'm like, this place is amazing, right? At least weather-wise. Not spiritually. That's a different question, right? So that day she decided she didn't want to take out the car. She figured that she'll take the bus, the local bus. It'd be a 5-minute ride up the street, drop off the baby, get back in the car, and go to work. And get back on the bus and go to work. She had a heavy bag in one hand, with the baby's diapers and creams and whatever, and she was carrying my son in the other hand, and she started walking. She didn't tell me she was going to do this. I had no idea. I had gone to prayers, otherwise I wouldn't have let her. I would have gone myself. She didn't want to bother me. She's a good woman. She wanted to be giving. So after I came back from prayer, I called her, where are you? So she said, I took the baby. And then she told me the following story. She said she went on the bus, she waited for the bus, freezing cold. She gets on the bus, a packed bus. And she had to stand, she paid for the thing, she had to stand right there next to the bus driver. And there was no seats. And again, she's carrying a baby and she's holding a heavy bag. And she said there were no seats. I said, no one got up to offer you a seat? She said, not a single person on the bus. I said, how could that be? Did they see you? She's like, yeah, they saw me. They try not to make eye contact. Try to look down. The only person, after 5 minutes of her standing there, to get up and offer her a seat was this older 60-year-old woman, 65-year-old woman, somewhere in the middle of the bus, to come forward to offer my wife a seat. Can you imagine a woman from the old generation? This generation, they were all into their phones and their gadgets and iPads and whatever they're involved in. Well, what is going on in the world? I couldn't believe it. But it has become a very selfish world, to the extent that I have a relative, someone, he was telling me that a lot of people shouldn't get married. Why? Because there's a term. He said they're called narcissistic. Right? They're narcissistic. It means someone who's into themselves, someone who's looking for pleasure for themselves, and everything is focused on themselves. If you detect someone like that, I would highly recommend to stay far away. Because the only way to have a really good, healthy, happy relationship is to have people that are giving. Chesed is the key, acts of kindness is the key to life and to marriage. You want to hear, and I'll conclude with this last few thoughts, in my opinion, God's entire intention in a marriage was to place you in a place where you're forced to give, to build those muscles of giving muscles, because we know that God's ultimate trait of all the great traits that God has is Rav Chesed, an abundant of kindness. Everything God does for us is kindness. He doesn't have to do it. It's all kindness. Our role and our job in life is to emulate God and become godly. What is the highest fashion in which a person can become godly? Is by becoming a giving person. And He placed this in marriage where you're forced to give. You have to work on that muscle. People who don't give are selfish, they end up in divorce. They end up part of the last lecture, the part of the 65-70% divorce rates. Large part of it is that. And there are a lot of other components which I'm going to discuss in the next 2 lectures about respect and other things. Very important lectures, the next 2 also. But one of the reasons is because people are selfish. They're not there for the other person. Listen to this. This is from a rabbi from a couple hundred years ago, one of the big rabbis, Rav Chaim Volozhin. This is what he wrote in the introduction of his book. Again, you ask this to anyone in the yeshiva world, they'll know Rav Chaim Volozhin. He's one of the biggest rabbis we've had. He says that his student writes, his son, Ko haya devaro alai tamid. My father constantly reiterated and focused on the following words. Shezeh kol ha'adam, this is the entire essence of a human being. Lo la'atzmo nivra, you're not created for yourself. Your point and goal in life is not for yourself. Rak laho elachreini, only to do good for others. Kechol asheyimatze bekochel asot, everything that you could find in your powers to do. My existence here is to turn myself from a natural taker. From a young age, everything was about me. What's the best food for me? What's the best school for me? What's the best college for me? What's the best job for me? All of a sudden, you get married, now it's not all about me. To turn yourself from a natural taker to a giver. Is it easy? No, it's hard. But that's his whole religion, focused on giving. The reason why we focus so much on tzedakah, a guy has $10. Again, all things being equal. Should you give $10 to one place, or should you give $1 to 10 different places? Again, all things being equal. I'm not telling you halacha over here. So it says the Rambam, it says you should give 10 $1 bills. Why? To 10 different places, because you're training yourself to give. This whole religion is focused on being outer-centered, focusing on other people. So this, I think, is one of the key ingredients for love in a marriage. Developing love only comes through giving, like all the examples I showed you. After many years of constantly doing for the spouse, you develop a love for them, a true love. Not a fake type of love where on the dime and the Twin Towers you abandon your wife. On the dime, if your husband is broke and he can't buy you the Mercedes, you're willing to leave him. So one of the key ingredients a person should look for when they're dating is to make sure that the person they're going out is not someone who's selfish. It is focused on giving. Especially, guys are looking for girls. The girls are much more naturally balat chesed. They're involved in kindness than the guys, but it goes the other way also. You have to look for someone who's not someone who's selfish, someone who's egotistical. The midot on top of the, in your laundry list of things, qualities you're looking for, the top quality, should not be looks. I'm telling this to the guys, and should not be having money and what type of car he's driving. That's not what you're looking for. Your life will be miserable if you find a guy who's very wealthy, but he's stuck up and he's arrogant and he doesn't have good traits. Your life will be a living Gehenna. Guarantee. You have my personal guarantee. It's not worth it, but people get blinded and people get emotionally sucked in, and it's enticing. Someone who has money, or someone who looks good, someone who's cute, someone who's fun, and they lose focus of what the priorities are. The top priority when you're dating is looking for someone with good traits. Midot is the key. It's on top of the list. Bar Yeshiva told me this, and I see it now after 11 years of marriage. You must look for midot, top. Even if a guy is not so good looking, but he has great midot. It's worth it to have an average guy, and he has tremendous midot, than have the best looking guy. And he's the star of the show. Anytime everywhere he walks in, it's much better to have midot. Same goes with the girls. If a guy's looking for girls, looking for someone, look for the midot. Don't get sucked in by who's the prettiest girl, who's the coolest girl. It's very enticing and it's very blinding. But a person will end up making a lot of wrong decisions if that's their focus and that's their priority. God should help us all that we should look for, we hopefully find all of us first of all, turn ourselves into the most giving person that we could possibly become in life, that is the goal of life, and thereby have a very happy marriage and happy relationships in our life.
Amen.
If anyone has any questions, you feel free to come over.